Hello, this is part two of lesson 8, and in this lesson I will be explaining the second part of lesson 8. In this lesson, I'm going to start talking about the benefits and limitations of part-time and full-time employees. So, as you all know, whenever I'm employing someone, it's either he's a full-time employee or he is a part-time employee. So let's see what's the difference when it comes to part-time or full-time employment or employees. The part-time employment is often considered to be between 1 and 30 to 35 hours a week. So I can, let's say, know if he's a part-timer or he's a full-timer is based on the hours this employee is going to work in a week. So if he's working from 1 hour to 35 hours a week, then he's a part-timer, and full-time employees usually works 35 hours or more in a week. So this is the difference between a part-time employee or a full-time employee. It's based on, or it's depending on the hours, the different number of hours he is working in. So some employees prefer part-time contracts, and for example, students who have also college work to do, or parents with the child care responsibilities. So some people, they prefer to have part-time contracts because they have other things or other responsibilities in life, and others, they also prefer the full-time the full-time contracts. So here we're going to see the benefits to the business of employing part-time employees. So what are the benefits for the business itself when they are employing part-timers, people who are working from 1 hour to 35 hours a week? So it is more flexible in the hours of work. There's more flexibility in the part-time employees. It's easier to ask employees just to work at busy times. So there are specific times that I will ask my part-time employees to work in, especially when busy times, which is like holidays or the days that I know there's a lot of customers. Easier to extend business operating hours by working evenings or weekends. So I can ask this part-time employee not just to work in its like formal hours, but also I can ask to extend his hours and ask him to work in the evening, in the night, or even in the weekends. It fits in with looking after children, and therefore employee will be willing to accept lower pay because this employee is working, let's say, in a limited number of hours weekly, so he's gonna be okay with lower pay, and he's gonna be more accepting, and reduces business costs compared to employing and paying a full-time employee, because the payment or the salary or the wage of a part-time employee is gonna be way less than a full-time employee. That's why some businesses, they prefer to have part-time employees rather than full-time employees, because it's different when it comes to payment. In some countries, it's easier to make part-time workers redundant. So when there's part-time workers, it's easier for the business to ask them, let's say stop working or to ask them to work just for 3 months or 4 months, unlike the full-time workers. And the limitation to a business of part-time employees are, so what is the limitation as a business that I'll be having when I'm having part-time employees? The first one is less likely to seek training, because employees may see the job as temporary. So especially when I ask this employee to work as part-time employee for, let's say, the next 3 months, so they're not going to be very motivated for any kind of training, because they know that their job is going to be over anytime soon. Takes longer to recruit 2 part-time workers than 1 full-time employee. It's going to take a longer time for the HR department to recruit 2 part-time workers rather than 1 full-time employee. So recruiting part-timers, it's going to take longer time to recruit than someone who is a full-time employee. Part-time employees can be less committed to the business and may be more likely to leave to get another job. There's this risk of leaving the job more than the full-timers. So the part-time employees, they're not loyal to the business. They are less committed than the full-timers, and they can leave at any moment to get another job, a job that's offering them better payment, for example. Less likely to be promoted because they will not have gained the same skills and experience as full-time employees. because they're spending less time in the business and less time, let's say, contacting the customers and whatsoever. So the chance of being promoted is going to be less than a full-timer. They're not going to get enough time to gain the skills and the experience as the full-timer who's spending more time in the business or in the company. More difficult to communicate with part-time employees when they are not in work, because they sometimes part-time employees, they work in a different shifts and they work in different times than the manager, so it's going to be a bit difficult to communicate, especially face-to-face communication. So the advantage and disadvantage of full-time employees are the opposite of the part-time employees. So if you were asked about the full-time employees, you just have to write the exact opposite of part-time employees. So the importance of training and the methods of training. So in the HR department, as we explained, that the training programs is being assessed and they're being put by the HR department. It's all the responsibility of the HR department. So here we're going to see the importance of training. So training your employees, it's like one of the, let's say, should be one of the main objectives for the HR department in order to have the benefit of the training, and to as an HR department they should understand the importance of the business, because the training is like it's going to introduce new process or new equipment. It's going to improve the efficiency of the workforce, and also it's going to provide training for the unskilled workers to make them more valuable to the company. They're going to make them more skillful, and it's going to decrease the supervision needed. When I train the employees, there's no need for me to keep on controlling and to stay supervising their work, because I know they have the right skills to do their job perfectly. Improve the opportunity for internal promotion. So because of the training, because the training is going to give them more skills, more experience, the chance of being promoted is going to be, let's say, it's going to be there. It's going to happen just because you are learning, you're gaining more experience through training. Decrease the chances of accidents. Because this employee has been trained, he knows how to do certain, let's say, tasks, so accidents will not be happening a lot in the factory, in the company, or in the business. So employees should be clear about the benefits of the training, or they will not work hard or take the training seriously. Training is usually trying to achieve one of more of the following. So why in the beginning I do this kind of training? Why do I train my employees? Number one, or these are like the general objectives of training, is to increase the skills of the employees, to increase the knowledge, to improve the employees' attitude, to encourage them to accept change, and to increase the awareness. And these are, let's say, the general objectives of training, or what they are trying to achieve through training. Here we have the three main types of training. So not all trainings are the same. We have three main types of training. We have induction training, we have on-the-job training, and we have off-the-job training. So induction training is the first type of training is induction training. It's an introduction. So from the word induction, we get the word introduction. It's an introduction given to new employees, specifically explaining the business activities, the procedures, and also introducing them to their fellow workers. So in the induction training, it's a training that is being given to new employees, and in this induction training, the new employees are going to be there. We're going to explain the business activities to them, the procedures, the customs, and also we're going to let them meet their fellow workers, the people who are working with them. We have the second type of training is on-the-job training. So when I'm saying on-the-job training, it means that it occurs by watching a more experienced worker doing the job. So in this type of training, I will let this new employee to watch someone who is more experienced doing the job that he is supposed to do, or something related to his job. And we have off the job training, involves being trained away from the workplace, usually specialist training. So on the job training, the first thing you must know that it happens inside the business, and it's the training happening, let's say, watching someone who is more experienced in the same field. And also off the job training, it's away from the workplace, and this training is being given by a specialist. So here we have number one, the types of training. As we said, induction training, where employee is new to the job, and also when the employee they do know nothing about the business or the people who are working with or what he's expecting from them. So this induction program is going to last sometimes for a day and sometimes for several days. It depends on the company and the job that he is going to fill. When a person starts, let's say, a new school, they show him around. The same thing happens when someone is new to the company. They show him around. They show him who's responsible, who's the managers of all the departments. They just show him around and talk more about the business, and they show him more information about the business itself. Now, let's see the advantages of induction training. So, as an induction training, especially for the new employees, the first one, it helps new employees to settle into their job quickly, to understand more about the job, to know everything they should know at the beginning of their work. They may be legal requirements to give health and safety training at the start of the job. So also in this training, they're going to be, let's say, explaining the legal requirement when it comes to health and safety in this job. And also because I'm explaining everything to this new employee, so mistakes are less likely to happen. The disadvantages of induction training, it's time consuming, especially in the large businesses where they take in new employees or they employ a lot of people during the year. So it's going to be time consuming. Also means wages are paid, but no work is being done by the worker. We're going to spend time, let's say, showing this new employee around while this employee is not doing the job. So it's going to be paying wages for this week or for this 3 days, and without actually this employee doing his job, and delays at the start of the employee commencing their job. And also, instead of letting the employee starting his work, no, I'm just showing him around, I'm explaining stuff for him, so it's gonna delay the start of this job. Then we have the on-the-job training, and we said that on-the-job training is where this employee is watching someone who is more experienced in the field or someone who's doing the exact same job that he's supposed to do. And this method is only suitable for the people who are employed, who are unskilled or still semi-skilled jobs. So the advantages on the job training: number one, individual tuition is given, and it is in the workplace. So it's individually happening for individual, let's say, employees. It's not a group training, and also it is in the workplace. So there is no need to take this new employee to send him away and to pay for the traveling costs of this new employee. It ensures that there's some production from the worker while they are training. Also, they make sure that, let's say, some production form is happening while this new employee is training. We're not wasting time. It usually costs less than the off-the-job training. Also, we talked about the costs over here, so it costs less. And also, it is training tailored to specific needs of the business. So this training is going to be for specific tasks, not a general training. So we're going to be focusing in this training on their specific, let's say, needs, not everything. So the disadvantages of on-the-job training: number one, the trainer will not be as productive as usual because they are showing the trainee what to do instead of getting on their job. Because in the on-the-job training, he's just watching an experienced person doing the job, and he's not actually doing it himself. The trainer may have bad habits, and they may pass these to the trainee. So maybe the trainer have some bad habits, and this new person is, let's say, learning these bad habits, and they might pass it to the trainee. And also, it may not lead to training qualifications recognized outside the business. So also sometimes it may not lead to training qualification recognized outside the business, because these training qualification are only for this specific business. So outside the business, he will not, let's say, use them or be beneficial for him as a trainee. So off the job training over here, it's where the worker goes away from the workplace. It happens away from the workplace, and also it may happen in a different part of the building or in a total different place. And also, you must know that aside of happening outside the business, also this training is being happening or being made or being trained by specialists or in a specialist training center. Also, in this of the of in this method of training, of the job training, it's happening for the jobs that has complex tasks or something that needs a lot of, let's say, learning. So that's why off the job is the best method for training. And also off the job training also involves classroom learning using lecture, role playing, case studies, or computer simulation, because they are, let's say, training them for complicated tasks or complex tasks, unlike the on the job training. So the advantages of off-the-job training: number one, a broad range of skills can be taught using these techniques. A lot of I'm not just teaching this trainee a specific skill. No, I'm teaching him, or I'm training him for a large, let's say, number of skills, a broad range of skills. If these courses are taught in the evening or after work, they are cheaper for the business because employee will still carry out their normal duties during the day. So, like if he's been working from 8 till 3 and the training is at 3.5 till, let's say, 8 or okay, so and during the daytime, this employee is gonna do his job in the business, and he's also gonna learn in the afternoon. So it's not gonna affect his working hours over here. And also, the business will only need to pay for the course, and it will not also lose the output of the employee. So as a business, the only cost is gonna be paying for the course, and also the output of the employee is gonna be for the business itself, for the benefit of the business. Employees may be taught a variety of skills, becoming multi-skilled, and this makes them more versatile. They can be moved around the company when need arises, because I'm training this employee a variety of skills. So whenever there is, let's say, a need, I can use, or I can ask the help of this employee to fill in the, let's say, fill and to satisfy this need. Like I can change his position because this employee that I trained has different skills in different departments. It often uses expert trainings who have up-to-date knowledge of business practices. Also, making sure that my employees as a business, they're being trained by experts, by people who has a lot of knowledge and experiences, and they are also up to date. They're teaching them up to date knowledge so they can practice it and doing it in my business. The disadvantages of the job training: it costs a lot of money. It means wages are paid but no work is being done by the worker. So it's just like if I didn't, let's say, let this employee do what, or to apply what he learned, that means that I'm paying him money on things that he's not applying in his work, and no work is being done, especially if by chance the training was during the daytime, or in the time where the worker is supposed to be working in the business. The additional qualification means it is easier for the employee to leave and find another job, because now he's more qualified and now he's more skillful. Training is necessary for the success of most businesses. It's a form of investment, but in human capital, not physical capital. Investment usually leads to greater output in the future, and true of employees as well as machine. Why reducing the size of the workforce might be necessary. So, workforce planning is where businesses decide on the type and number of employees needed in the future. So when I'm planning workforce planning. That means I'm planning for my workforce. I'm doing small details, or I'm planning for the future details of my employees or my workforce. So in this workforce planning, I'm establishing the workforce needed by the business for foreseeable future in terms of the number and skills of employees required. So if I'm planning for my workforce, I'm seeing that in the future, what is the needed number of employees and what is the needed skills required from these employees. So, often businesses will require additional employees when they are expanding, but sometimes they will need to downsize the workforce. So when I'm expanding my business, of course, I will need additional number of employees. But sometimes a lot of businesses, they want to downsize the employees, which means reducing the number of employees. So if I have, let's say, 100 employee, I have to downsize the workforce. I need to have, let's say, 50 or 20 employees. So there are different situations why this happens, why I'm, let's say, decreasing the number of workforce or employees that I have. The first situation is the introduction of automation. I'm replacing humans with machines, and falling demand for their goods and services. As a business, the demand from customers is, let's say, falling, so I don't need to produce the same amount of output or the same amount of goods or services. So I don't need this huge number of employees. Also, factory, shop, office closure, the closing a store, closing a shop, an office, a factory. Then I don't need this extra number of employees really relocating their factory abroad. So I'm changing the location of the factory. Instead of, let's say, working in Jordan, no, I'm working in Egypt, in Morocco. So the employees in Jordan are not needed. Number 5, a business has merged or been taken over, and some jobs have become surplus to requirement in the newly combined businesses. A lot of department, when I'm merging with another business, or another business took over the business that the employees were working in, so sometimes this new management do not need this high number of employees. That's why sometimes they downsize the workforce. When it has been decided how many employees will be required and what their skills needed to be, the human resources department can now can plan how this will be achieved. So, if as I said, in the workforce planning, we're focusing on two things: the number of employees needed in the future and the skills of the employees that is required. So if I did this plan, then the next step is to find out the skills of all the present employees. I will see what skills do we have now and what skills do we need. And number 2, not including anyone who will be leaving soon, for example, due to retirement. So I will be excluding all the employees that are going to be leaving soon. Consulting with existing staff as to who could and would want to retrain to fill the new jobs. I will see, I will consult the existing staff and I will ask who wants to be retrained for the job, who wants to, let's say, gain new skills, and preparing a recruitment plan to show how many new staff will be needed when it comes to number, and how they should be recruited, whether internally and externally. So in point 1 and 2 and 3, we are talking about the skills, and 4, we are talking about the number. If a business needs to reduce the number of employees, it can be done in 2 ways. So if I want to, let's say, reduce the number of employees, there's a huge number of employees that's no longer necessary or needed. I can either use dismissal or redundancy. Now let's see what is the difference between dismissal and redundancy. So dismissal is when employment is ended the will of the employee, usually for not working in accordance with the employment contract. Meanwhile, redundancy is when an employee is no longer needed, so loses their job. It is not due to any aspect of their work being unsatisfactory. So dismissal is when The employee leaves their job because like they did something wrong, or their behavior didn't wasn't right, or they did a specific action that led the business to dismiss him. So also here, the employee is ended against the will of the employee. The employee didn't want to leave, but as a business, he did an action that wasn't accepted, so the business will dismiss him. Over here, dismissal. Before that, let me just say, workers may also leave their job because it's either they retire or they resign. When I say retire, they are getting older and they want to stop working. Resign because they found another job and they are willingly leaving the job. Now back to dismissal. This is when where a worker is told to leave the job because their work or behavior is unsatisfactory. They did something that wasn't accepted by the business. For example, an employee who was constantly late for work, or he was given a lot of warnings, he still continued to be late and probably will be dismissed. Or he did an action that wasn't, let's say, accepted, such as stealing, or he's not able to do his job, or he's not doing, let's say, his job based on specific standards explained by the manager. So this is one of the actions that can be taken against this employee, is dismissal, stopping him from working. And also we have redundancy. So there may be occasions when a number of employees will be no longer needed through no fault of their own. So they did nothing wrong, but the business wants them to actually stop working, or they can't have this number of employees, for example, during a period of falling sales resulting from an economic recession. There's something that was out of the hand of the business. When an employee is made redundant, they may be given some money to compensate them for losing their job. In some countries, this is laid down in law. For example, 1 week's wage for every year that the employee has worked for the business. So you can't just let go of this employee. You have to compensate them and for losing their job. And it's usually by paying them money, or usually this amount of money is, it's been, dealt with in the contract part when they assign the contract. So, which worker to make redundant? So, if I want to let go of, as a business, I want to let go of this business, of this employee, and I don't want him to work for my business. Let's say we have, types of workers to make redundant. The following factors, they're going to help the business to decide which worker to make redundant. Let's say if I have 1,000 employees, which one I should make redundant. So there are factors that I should work upon. The first one, some workers may be volunteer and be happy to be redundant because they may have another job they want to go to, they want to retire early, or they want to start their own business. So I will look for volunteers, for trainees, and I will ask them to, I will thank them for the job, and I will ask them to leave nicely. And the length of time employed by the business. So workers who have worked for the business for a long time are often retained. They will have the most experience and be the most expensive to make redundant if redundancy payment are made. So if I want to make someone redundant, I'll make sure I will pay attention to the length of time these employees were in this business. So because the more the years they've been working in this business, the more, I have to compensate them with money. So I will make sure not to make anyone with high experience to be redundant. Workers with essential skills that are needed by the business or whose skills could be transferable to other departments are often retained. So I will make sure that I will not make anyone who's redundant like someone who I need his skills. I cannot, let go of his skills. This is someone that I will pay attention not to make redundant. Employment history of the worker, whether they have good or poor attendance, punctuality, or appraisal records. So I will make sure to see the history of the worker. If he has a good history, I'll make sure not to make him redundant, unlike the employees who has been warned a lot. They have a lot of, warnings on their record and so on. And number 5, which departments of the business needs to lose workers and which need to retain workers. I'll see which department has a lot of unnecessary workers, or not unnecessary, but has a high number of employees where they actually need lower number of employees. So, legal controls over employment issues. In many countries, governments have passed laws that affect the relationship between employers and employees. The most important employment issues affected by legal controls are, let's say, there are things between the employer and the employee that are legal, that's been set by the law, and some of these things that law is, let's say, it's made by the law. It's like employment contracts, unfair dismissal, discrimination, health and safety, and legal minimum wage. These are the most important employment issues that can be affected legally. So here we have the contract of employment. So we know what is meant by contract. Let's see what is a contract of employment means. The contract of employment is a legal agreement between the employer and the employee listing the rights, responsibilities of the worker. In this legal agreement, the employer will write all the responsibilities, going to list all the rights of the employee, and all the responsibilities and, let's say, rights will be listed in this legal agreement. So it will set out the terms of the relationship between the employee and the employer, and usually in this legal agreement it contains these points, which is the name of employer, the name of employee, the job's title or the position, the date when employment is to begin, when to start the work, how many hours he's going to work, the rate of pay, and other benefits such as bonus, sick pay, pensions, and when payments will be made, holidays, amount of notice that the employer or the employee must give to end the employment. So let's say a pre-notice when if the employee wants to leave the job. So all these let's say points are going to be included in the contract of employment. So, impact of employment contract on employers and employees. So, what is the impact? Why shall I do this contract? Is it necessary? Is it beneficial for both the employer and the employee? Now we're going to see the impact. So both employers and employees know what is expected of them. When I have this contract as an employee, I will understand what the business is expecting from me, and as an employer, I will be listing what I'm expecting from this employee. It provides some security of employment to the employee. It's something official and legal. If the employee does not meet the conditions of the contract, then legal dismissal is allowed. So they can dismiss you in a legal way, and they do not have to pay you anything. If the employer fails to meet the conditions of the contract, for example, does not offer the holiday the worker is entitled to, then the employee can seek legally binding compensation. So all the employer and the employee, they know their rights, they know their responsibilities, so they can work effectively with each other. So here we have something called the unfair dismissal. The unfair dismissal. This occurs when an employer ends a worker's contract for employment for a reason that is not covered by the contract. So, as I said, the employer and the employee, they let's say, they agreed on specific points and what they should do, what they shouldn't do. So the unfair dismissal happens when the employee did nothing wrong, but the employer actually dismissed him. So this may be for reasons of discrimination, or it might be for the employer wants to reduce the worker's number but does not want to pay redundancy compensation. Unfair dismissal is illegal. So I can't dismiss someone without actually explaining or without a specific reason. So it's illegal in many countries, as the worker has the right to get the compensation, the money the money, and to be offered their previous job back by taking the case into industrial tribunal. So what is an industrial tribunal? Let's see. So So if the business owner or the employer dismissed this employee unfairly for no specific reason, it's either they give them the compensation or they offer them their job back, okay? Or if the employer didn't do both, they can take the case into industrial tribunal, which is a type of law court, okay, that makes judgments on disagreements between companies and their employees. For example, workers' complaints of unfair dismissal, discrimination at work. So they can put a lawsuit in the industrial tribunal, and some judges gonna do the judgments, and they're gonna see who's right and who is wrong. So what is the impact of unfair dismissal on employer and employee? So what would happen if there is unfair dismissal for both the employer and the employee? So number one, employer must keep very accurate records of workers' performance if they want to claim that the employee has broken their contract of employment before dismissing them. So they should have an accurate record to show that actually this worker's performance wasn't that good, or to have, let's say, a decent reason. Number two, employees have security of employment as long as they fulfill their contract and are not made redundant. So the employees will be more secure to have, let's say, their contract, because it's going to secure their job for them as long as they fulfill their contract and not to be made redundant. Allows employees to take their employer to industrial tribunal, what we just explained over here. It's going to give them the right to go to use the law against their employer, so they can feel if they felt they've been treated unfairly, and to get the compensation they were promised to get. Over here, makes the business less likely to treat employees unfairly as they know they may be taken to industrial tribunal. So as a business or as an employer, I'll make sure not to do unfair dismissal, because I know that if I treated this employee unfairly, they're going to use the law against me, and I will pay compensation or give them their job back. So here we have protection against discrimination. Discrimination at work is when the employer makes decisions that are based on unfair reasons. This main examples when workers are treated differently because they. So here sometimes if the, let's say, if I was a if the employee was, let's say, dismissed from work for unfair reasons such as discrimination because the different race or color, because the employee has different religion, or and they're opposite sex, or they are considered too old, too young for this job, or they are disabled in some way, all of these are unfair reasons and they are considered a discrimination. So, in some countries, this kind of discrimination, or stopping someone because of his color, stopping someone from working because he belongs to a specific race, it's illegal. If they were not illegal, many sections of society would find it very difficult to gain jobs or to achieve promotion at work. Businesses can also lose out by practicing unfair discrimination. So they could fail to select a very good worker just because they used one of the reasons above not to select the person. So it's also discrimination in the selection part. I'm not selecting this qualified employee just because he let's say believe in specific religion, or he's a female, he's a male. And also, in addition to these laws, many employers have an equal opportunity policies. Employees who consider that they have been unfairly discriminated against appeal to an equal opportunity community. So if all employers should work like to treat everyone equally and to avoid the unfairly discrimination because it's illegal. Impact of discrimination on employers and employees. So let's start with the first one. Employees should be treated equally in the workplace and when being recruited, and they should be paid equal amounts of similar work. So the impact of discrimination, knowing what is discrimination, will allow the employees to be treated equally in the workplace and to be recruited equally, to have fair chances and also to be paid equal amounts of money for the similar jobs. So if a man and a woman are both equally well qualified for the job, they should be treated equally. So this is based on, let's say, the gender. It should not be the case that one rather than the other is given the jobs just simply because of their sex, just because they're a man, just because she's a woman, she's gonna get the job. No, they should be treated equally and to stay away from discrimination. Employees who have a disability are from different races or from different religions should be treated in the same way as all others. So is basically we're just talking about treating all employees equally despite of all the differences between them. Employees have to be careful when wording an advertisement for a job. For example, they cannot advertise for a woman, they must say person. So this is also like to avoid discrimination. When selecting an employee for a job, an employer must treat all applicants equally. If a business does not do this, then it could be persecuted and fined. So this is a part of, let's say, treating all applicants like equally and to allow them to understand that each and every applicant has the same opportunity to get this job. By following these laws carefully, businesses should recruit and promote staff on merit alone, and they should help to increase motivation at work if the business is following these laws carefully, all the staff is going to be they're going to be increased motivation at work because they know they're working for a business that respects human and they treat them equally. Health and safety at work. So in many years ago, most employers cared little for the safety of their workers. Machines did not have safety cages. Protective clothing wasn't issued. Conditions were often very hot or very cold, noisy, unpleasant. So this is we're talking about the working condition and safety at work. So the argument often used by employers to explain such conditions what it would cost a lot of money if I give you the appropriate, let's say, equipment, if I gave you the right, let's say, conditions for the workplace. Their only reason or their only explanation was, and it cost a lot of money. If the existing workers did not like the condition, then they could leave, as there were many unemployed people who would do their job. So they said, if you don't like it, just leave. Fine, you just deal with it, because there are a lot of people they want their job. So that was way in the past. Now we are in the modern world, so it's no longer acceptable. Most employers now care for their workers' safety. One reason for this is that many laws have been passed that have forced them to improve the health and safety. So it's now illegal to have let's say an unsafe working condition. In most countries, there are now laws which make sure that all employees protect workers from dangerous machinery. So it's against the law if you let the workers work in dangerous machineries without the right protection. And also, as a business, you should provide safety equipment and clothing. You should maintain reasonable workplace temperature, not too hot, not too cold. Provide hygienic conditions and washing facilities. Do not insist on excessively long shifts and provide breaks in the work timetable. So if the business do not, let's say, do all of these 5 points, it's illegal. Impact of health and safety on employers and employees. Also, the cost to employer of meeting the health and safety regulation, for example, better firefighting equipment. So, the cost of employer of meeting the health and safety regulation is no longer an issue. So, no matter what is the cost they should provide it for it to have, let's say, provide the certain circumstances for the workers. Time needs to be found to train workers in health and safety precautions. So when it comes to health and safety, they should take time to train workers how for the precautions of health and safety. Workers feel safer and more motivated to work when this business is providing health and safety at work, so the worker will feel safer, and it's going to reduce accidents rate and also the cost of compensation if someone was injured at work. Are health and safety laws and controls over the business a good idea? Most managers think so. Workers cost a great deal to recruit and train. It's worthwhile keeping them safe and healthy. So when I'm recruiting and training all these employees, they're going to cost me a lot of money. So since I recruited and trained this employee, so it's better for me as a business to keep this employee safe and healthy. So, and also when they are safe and healthy, they're going to be motivated, they're going to work more efficiently, and they're going to stay in the business for a longer time, being committed and loyal. So, for these reasons, some employers in the country where they are weak health and safety laws will still provide working conditions of a very high safety standards. So the managers of these firms have taken an ethical decision. So even if there's no legal rules or regulations that if I didn't do this kind of safety environment or I didn't do this healthy environment, I still do it anyway. Why? Because these managers, they did something called an ethical decision. An ethical decision is a decision taken by the manager or a company because of the moral code observed by the business. It's not because they have to by the law, it's because they want to. So, uh, so most workers would think that this is the best thing that any manager could do that, and also it's going to make them motivated to work hard and stay in this business because of this ethical decision. But unfortunately, in some countries, there are employers that still take advantage of workers. They may be no protection or on the length of shifts. They may millions of children still be found working in the industries with little protection from danger and ill health. And also, in these countries, workers are exploited and often paid low wages. So some countries are still, let's say, doing these illegal, let's say, performances. They're still not protecting their employees. They're still giving them long shifts and low wages. So here we're going to be talking, since we're talking about wages today, now we're going to be talking about legal minimum wage. So, as you all know, all workers, they are expecting an exchange of their work that they're doing for the business, and also they have the right to be paid. So there should be a written agreement between worker and employer, which is contract of employment, which will contain details not only of hours of work and the nature of job, but also the wage rate, the frequently wages, how frequently the wages will be paid, and what deduction will be made from wages, for example, the income tax. So all these, let's say, points are going to be added to this contract of employment when it comes to payment. The wage rate to be paid, how much, like weekly, are you going to pay me $100, and are you going to pay me 4 times a week or 3 times a week, or are you going to take a percentage of this wage from an income tax? As an employee, they should know these details. In some countries, employers can pay whatever wage rate they like. If there's high unemployment or if unemployment benefits are low, workers may be offered very low wages. Increasingly, governments are taking actions against employers that pay low wage. So now it's illegal to pay low wages in some countries, of course. So this action often takes the form of legal minimum wage. A minimum wage exists in parts of China, India, and USA. So a minimum wage makes it illegal for an employer to pay an hourly rate below the minimum wage set. So in each country, they say like it's minimum to pay $8 per hour. If the employer paid 7 or 6, it's not going to be legal. Impact of legal minimum wage on employers and employees. So, it should prevent strong employers from exploiting unskilled workers who could not easily find other jobs. So this legal minimum wage will let's say allow the employers not to take advantage of the unskilled workers and to pay them low wage just because they cannot find a job, as many unskilled workers will now be receiving higher wages because of this legal minimum wage. It might encourage employers to train them to make sure that they are more productive. productive. It will encourage more people to seek work because they know that when I'm working, I will be paid a reasonable amount of money, whether a wage or a salary. A low paid worker will earn more and will have higher living standards. So because of this legal minimum wage, whoever was paid less than it should be, now they are paid more. And also it increases business cost. This is another impact. Business cost. It will force the business to increase the prices because they are paying wages cost more than before. Some employers will not be able to afford these wage rates. They may make workers redundant instead. So unemployment may rise. So if the country is forcing the employer to raise their wages, sometimes the employer couldn't, let's say, afford this kind of increase. So a lot of people will be let go of their job. Other workers receiving just above the minimum wage level may ask for higher wage to keep the same differential between themselves and lower paid workers. Business cost will rise again. So also, even if other workers are like barely above the minimum, they're gonna ask for higher wage. So this is also cost for the business. Thank you. See you in the next video. Please study well.